truly day in and day out is oftentimes highly repetitive. It's oftentimes done, solo. It's done in all types of weather, beautiful weather and inclement weather. And so it can feel like a grind. And I embrace that concept. I like the idea of it being a grind. Do you think of the grind as a negative thing, Sean, or do you feel like that's where you excel?
Oh, that's definitely where I excel. I look for the grind, not all the time, obviously, but I want that. I want the grind. We don't necessarily like the grind. We look at the weather outside and, but once we get out there, it's, and the grind is where that's where we grow, and that's not just in sports, but it's in work. I feel like it's in everyday life.
Hey there, podcast listener. If this is your first time here, welcome to the Eat Half Walk Double podcast, coming to you from the Ascend Endurance Coaching Studios here in lovely Stratford, New Hampshire, US of A. I'm your host, Chris Dunn. If you follow the show, thank you and welcome back. So this show chronicles my 4 decades in endurance sports as an exercise physiologist, coach, race director, and athlete, told through the stories of the important, influential, and interesting people I've met along the way, while I catch up with friends, colleagues, rivals, clients, and the occasional family member. It's my hope you'll learn a little something about health, fitness, and the secrets to living well along the way. Sean Snow is my guest. For those that follow him on social media, his daily positive posts are inspirational and uplifting, and they are a breath of fresh air in an otherwise swamp of negativity. Yet I suspect that very few know the story behind those posts. In a very real sense, they are an integral component of his continued success as a 56-year-old endurance athlete. Finally, in order to more fully appreciate Sean's unique approach, I present to you a challenge. In the center of a blank piece of paper, draw 9 dots in 3 rows of 3. The square should be approximately 1 inch by 1 inch. Now, without lifting your pen from the paper, draw 4 lines that connect all 9 dots. It might be helpful to pause the show for a moment after this intro and attempt to solve the puzzle. Well, here he is, Sean Snow. Sean, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you having me on, Chris. It's an honor.
It's good to see you. How are you?
I'm doing good. Yeah, I'm doing good. It's been a while, man. It seemed like yesterday we were chasing each other in snowshoes.
It has been a while, and I want to talk about snowshoes. I was just finishing up dinner with my wife, and she asked who was on the show, and I said, Sean Snow. And she said, wow. She said, when was the last time you saw him? And I thought to myself, I'm not sure I remember the last time that I saw Sean. I said, almost certainly, it was likely at a snowshoe race, but it could have been.
Is it Loon? Remember we saw each other at Loon Mountain. I did it. I don't know, maybe 5 years ago. I think I saw you.
2018. Yeah, I was. I was sort of scrolling through your social media feed to see if I could come up with some inspiration for the show. So maybe tidbits, things I wanted to talk about. Sure enough, there was a photo of you on Upper Walking Boss and the date was 2018. And I know that, believe that was the last year that Paul and I directed that race. But then, I mentioned that to Karen and I said, well, there were probably 1,000 people there. I'm like, I know Sean was there because I saw the photo of him there.
Yeah.
But I don't remember seeing.
You're a busy guy, man.
Like race director brain fog. dialogue, right? So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
my apologies
Yeah, that's-
if I don't remember or didn't remember that you and I saw each other in 2018. Yes, Loon Mountain Race, Upper Walking Box. Well, maybe we'll talk about that too. That's an interesting race, and we have an interesting connection there. Well, let me close the loop on something that I presented in the intro to the podcast. So for the listener who took the 9-dot challenge, I ask you, are you stuck? And if you are stuck, what if I added the additional instruction to feel free to use the entire piece of paper? Now, Sean and I will get back to the 9-dot challenge here in just a little bit, because it does pertain to an important philosophy that both Sean and I share. So more on the 9-dot challenge in just a moment. Sean, anyone who follows you on social media knows you to be an incredibly positive and uplifting force of nature who routinely shares inspirational messages. Just recently, you shared the following quote by Burton Hills. And that quote was, "Happiness is not a destination, it's a method of life." Now, I believe that in order for anyone to believe that that's true, we must accept that each of us holds the power to create our own happiness. Sean, what's your method of creating happiness?
It's an everyday method. To me, it's it takes work every day to stay in I was speaking for myself, my moment. How would I say it? I start with a morning routine every day. I've done that for the past 7 years. Haven't missed a day, and it starts off my day. In a positive frame of mind, if you would. Most of my days are pretty long between working out and the job that I have. And my job is a pretty high stress job. And then I know I'm going to be going into the day challenged. I deal with customers all day, and it can get pretty stressful. And I've got to have that frame of mind to stay focused, stay positive, and not only stay positive with myself, but try to spread it with others. And it starts with my routine, and I try to spread it all day. I mean, I'm certainly not perfect by any means, but to me, it really does take work. In this day and age, we're constantly bombarded with negativity and just the bad events, and I just feel like there's just not enough positivity and optimism out there. And I'm not the kind of person that's out there, just I guess acting it, and just I want to be it. I want to be that person. I want to start with my post in the morning, and from the minute I get to the gym to stopping and getting my bagel at my local bagel shop, everybody that I touch, man, I want to try to spread it, and when I'm running in the morning, 5 a.m., anybody that I see, I say good morning to. I don't care who it is, or I may get a response, I may not, but I just feel like we're all put on this earth for a reason, and for whatever reason, that's kind of, I guess, the direction that I want to go.
I also believe that the law of attraction applies to each of us, particularly as it relates to social media. And the law of attraction suggests that we receive the energy back from the universe equal to the energy that we put out into the universe. In other words, positivity begets positivity. And the reverse of that is true, right? That negativity begets negativity. So in all that we do is project negativity into the universe, it's not surprising that our life is infinitely more complicated and more challenging. But I also, again, firmly believe that the opposite of that is true. When you project positivity, it isn't that life doesn't happen to positive people. Life happens to positive people. But I think the difference is that when life happens to positive people, it's how they react to those life events, and they react oftentimes in forward-looking, constructive ways, working to solve the puzzle, to overcome the challenge, to figure out the problem.
Absolutely.
You know,
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting now that you frame your inspirational messages that you share on social media in the context of part of your morning routine. In other words, it's a way to help jumpstart your day, while at the same time lifting up others.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. And I mean, it early on, I think that it really it was a big part of my routine on, inspiring myself and holding myself accountable. But I think it's it's been almost 7 years, since I started it every day. And, it's come to a point where, I need it. I definitely need it, but I'm, only a few people may see it, but if it helps one person, then it's done its trick. And every day I say, man, if I can put the light into one person, man, I've done my job, and, if I can do it in 500 people, I'm doing even better, I really do believe, you're absolutely right on is karma, I mean, it's good karma. And man, it's not easy. It's not easy for sure. But it does become easy once you hold yourself accountable to working on it every day, and, those 2 years with COVID, man, that was a great example of, what you said, Chris, is, you got to stay positive. You got to stay driven. You got to stay motivated, and, keep seeing the positive in it. And as difficult as it was, and, has been for a lot of people, man, it's, look, I saw tremendous growth in so many people from keep on keeping on, seeing, in the positive. And, you come out the end of each day, regardless of what was thrown at you, having grown, in growth, when you can keep that mindset,
Totally. Sean, if you would, if you don't mind, if it's not prying too much, would you share a little bit more about what your morning routine entails?
Yeah. So I get up. First thing I do is have coffee, a glass of water, and get my coffee, and then I roll out a yoga mat. I've got a couple different books that I have, I have little quotes out of, or paragraphs, and I've got a list, of 10 things that I'm grateful for that I read. Do a little bit of praying, yoga. I could do about 10-15 minutes of yoga. Then I go through, of late the past year or so, I do some breathing techniques, and I started meditating as well, which that's only been of recent, and which I never would have thought would bring on the benefits just that I've seen of late, by sitting there, in my own thoughts, So most of my routine in the past has been all, doing something, engaging in something, and, in quiet. I've got no music going or anything like that, but and it usually takes me, anywhere from a half hour to 40 minutes to do. And then, after I get done with, with the meditation, that's when I do my post. Make sure I get my post out there, and then the day starts. And I do. I've read it in countless books, and I've heard about the morning routines and just how important it is to. I do not go to any news or Facebook or anything when I first wake up. It's probably a half hour, 40 minutes of just me working on me and what the day is going to bring. And it really has, for myself, it's given me a very solid foundation on being able to handle what I can handle.
Well, I think there's really good evidence to suggest that how you start your day almost always determines the trajectory of your day. And again, doesn't suggest that folks who have a morning routine similar to yours don't have challenging things that pop up throughout the day. But
all day.
Yeah, right. But truthfully, your ability to weather those storms is enhanced and fortified because of these self-care practices that you routinely and regularly work on first thing in the morning, right?
Yes.
I mean, I'm sure you've heard the theory of, the first thought of the day oftentimes will predetermine the day.
Yeah.
So if your first thought is a negative thought,
yeah,
more often than not, you're gonna finish the day having had a really challenging day.
Yeah.
Conversely, if your first thought is a positive thought,
yeah,
it's interesting how the universe works. Almost always, those are days that end up being much more positive days. Well, I find it interesting but not surprising, someone who is as physically active as you are, right? That their morning routine is really a series of fairly passive practices. Passive meaning with very little movement. That they are spiritual and uplifting from a mental health standpoint. Do you see it that way?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. And when I think back to before I started this, this routine, I certainly didn't feel, I was not as grounded as I am now. Yeah, I really do. And I'll even, when we talk about the morning, but I'll, go a little bit further in the evening. And this is something that I've learned, it's taken me a long time to realize this too, but it's often one of the last things that we do or we watch or what we read before we go to sleep at night can really affect what we dream about and what sets the tone for the next day as well. And it's just amazing to me how, just something as simple as, checking the score of a game, just before I go to bed, hit the light, and it's boom, it's in my dreams, and I've really tried to focus on, reading some positive or just a quick, 2 minutes or 3 minutes of uplifting material just before I go to bed, not watching it, but actually reading it. And and again, it's and I guess in a lot of ways people would think that I'm kind of obsessed with it, but I am. I want my goal for myself and to spread is to really is to try to live it every day, and how does that happen? It takes that work to do,
Well, truth is that as we get older, it becomes increasingly important, I feel, to make sure that we are attending to all of the different elements of performance, right?
Right.
When we were in our 20s and 30s, we might have been able to get away with just being physical and that physicality oftentimes was enough to carry us through and to help lead us toward the things that we wanted to accomplish. But as our 20s turned into our 30s and 40s turned into our 50s, we realized that performance really is multifactorial, that there are other components to it. There's a nutrition component. There's a sleep component. There's a mindset component. And when we begin to fully appreciate that performance really is multidimensional, we can begin to broaden our work into all those different domains, right? And like literally, it's like a puzzle coming together piece by piece, right? That it's that excitement of putting together 3 or 4 pieces, and 3 or 4 pieces becomes 10 or 12 pieces. And as soon as you begin to put together a significant part of the puzzle, the picture begins to emerge, right? And you become even more excited when the picture sort of comes into focus. I found it interesting when you describe that nightly routine, because it's something that I preach to my athletes as well. And in fact, it's a practice that I have been working on for a number of years now. I call it something a little different, but we're talking about the same thing. I call it pre-setting intention.
Yeah.
So the last thing that I do when my head hits the pillow at night is I think about what I'm going to do tomorrow, the thing that I need to do, my one thing. What's my one thing, such that by doing it will make everything else easier or unnecessary. Now that I'm specifically referring to my activity pattern, but this certainly could be applied to any important thing that I would need to do. So I think about that thing. What am I going to do tomorrow? For instance, tomorrow is a day in which I will either mountain bike with the dogs, or I'll walk the dogs, and then I'll bring the dogs home, and then I'll go to the gym. That's my physical activity for tomorrow. So when my head hits the pillow tonight, I will be thinking about the what, why, when, and how I am going to execute what I need to execute tomorrow. I am pre-setting my intention. And in so doing, I actually grease the skids for my subconscious to execute on that thought and that plan tomorrow. Not that it happens spontaneously tomorrow, but it's much more likely to happen tomorrow because I have guided my subconscious to that outcome. Right? What's the expression? The body achieves what the mind believes.
Right.
Yeah. So, and so I think we're talking about the same thing. We may be using different terminology. But again, I find it fascinating that you and I have both, in our own way and in our own manner, sort of come to a very similar execution of something, mindset work, that we're going to talk about a little bit more, that I think is so incredibly important. Sean, before we go any further, for the listener who doesn't know Sean Snow, why don't you take a moment and introduce yourself?
Oh, geez. This I don't do well, but so yeah, I do. I do triathlons. I'm a triathlete, mainly long distance stuff. So do Ironman, half Ironman, marathons, all the way down to 5K, sprint triathlons. That's, and I don't do this good, do well stuff on this stuff, Chris. I was talking to my daughter about this before we came on. I'm like, man, I just don't do well with the tooting the horn type stuff. So so I've been doing Ironman for, my first one was in 2004, and been fortunate enough to be qualified for Hawaii a few times, and just take big passion in bringing my best to the line, and I just that's how I roll, and I want to keep doing it, keep doing it as long as my body, my mind, and my soul will let me there, you know?
Well, you are an incredibly humble person, and also an incredible inspiration to a lot of people, myself included. And I will talk a little bit more about that. So thank you for that somewhat tortured self-introduction. I mean, I could have done it for you, but I wanted the listener to hear it from your mouth. So with a little bit of luck, maybe that'll be the most difficult question I will ask you.
All right, sounds good.
Sean, let's talk a little bit about how you and I came to know each other. Again, a fun part of this podcast for me is getting an opportunity to sit down and share a little time with old friends, and kind of reminiscing about how we came to know each other. I'm gonna say that, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong here, but I'm gonna say that we were probably introduced through the sport of snowshoe racing here in New Hampshire. Probably in the early 2000s, late single,
probably mid 2000s, maybe.
Yeah,
I think the first time that we met was probably at the Beaver Brook race. That was the classic picture of that.
Scott Mason.
Yeah, and
that's right. You're in that photo. You can actually clearly see you in that photo.
But yeah, I think that was our first one, and then it just went crazy from there. I mean, I think probably for 3, 4, 5 years, it was just race after race, and God, those were just good times, just really good times. A lot of snow and a lot of pain, man, a lot of pain, and you and I were right there. I mean, it was just like, that's, we were just back and forth and it was just, it was so much fun, Yeah.
And I think it's principally how you and I became friends, in that in large part, because, we shared a lot of time on the trail, within the race. Either you ahead of me or me ahead of you, but both of us in fairly close proximity to each other, seemingly at every race. But quite interestingly, we both came to snowshoe racing from somewhat different athletic postures at that time. I mean, you were a triathlete, very active, a very competitive triathlete. I had done triathlon, but it was many, many years ago. At that time, I was a trail and mountain racer. And yet, here we found ourselves on snowshoes, or in snowshoes, on snow, racing all throughout New Hampshire those 3 or 4 winters. Yeah. I know why snowshoe racing was important for me, but why did you get into snowshoe racing?
Well, I think, I think it was the hardest. The first time I tried it, man, I damn near died, and, I was hooked. It was probably I feel like the 2 hardest sports that I've competed in terms of like a shorter race duration have been snowshoe racing and cyclocross. And, man, I just, I got hooked on it. Just for it, mostly, to begin with, for the camaraderie of it. But I was very intrigued with the power, the strength that I gained from it, leading into my triathlon, into my season, the mental toughness that it took to finish hard. But also the discipline that it took to stay at a certain pace, so that you didn't blow yourself up. Because I feel like it's the one sport, probably the biggest sport that I've ever done, that when you blow yourself up, you're done. And it was, and you walk that fine line, man. And when I say you're done, man, you just got nothing left in the tank. And so you can usually will yourself out of, biking or running or swimming or mountain biking or whatever. You can figure out, okay, I can kick it down a notch, but man, when you blew yourself up on those snowshoes, and and we did, and when and you and I would be neck and neck, and one of us would be, wouldn't be seen for, the one that blew up. Wouldn't be, you go from like, fifth or something to, to 80th or whatever, because you just can't even pick up your legs, and it was just like a great, great all around endurance sport to be a part of,
And you mentioned the camaraderie. That was a big part of it for me as well. I would only see certain people during snowshoe season because, as I mentioned earlier, perhaps I was a mountain and trail runner, and you were a triathlete. So although you dabble in the off-road stuff, so we might have crossed paths, but for the most part, and I'm sure that you would agree that this is true, that there would be. This was a certain community that you were involved with for a fairly short period of time. That 13 weeks in the wintertime.
Yeah.
And then you would roll into your triathlon season, and you would be connected to your triathlon community. But that snowshoe racing community was a very eclectic group because it really drew athletes from every sport seemingly. I mean, do you remember that to be the case?
Oh, absolutely. And I'll say that, I mean, a couple of quick notes that I think are just, you talk about camaraderie and in a group. I mean, where else can you? I'll never forget that race on I think it's what's the Madberry, the night race.
Kingman Farm snowshoe race.
We got lost, and the front group was like pretty far ahead, and I think you were in that group too. And somebody took a wrong right, and we went way down, like totally blew ourselves out. I mean, we went like, I don't know, maybe a quarter mile off course or whatever it was. And all of a sudden, there's like 6 of us, and we were just like, uh-oh. we took a wrong turn, and we had been going down, so we had to go back up the hill. And I don't know, we ended up getting destroyed, but we just laughed about it, And I mean, what else can you say on that? But I will say, you talk about, from athletes and people from various, sports. But I'll tell you, man, a lot of people that competed, from the different sports were top athletes from their sports. And in looking back on it, I think that the snowshoe racing really contributed to that. And it also, there was such a variety of athletes that did it. And that was kind of the fun part, from a beginner to the highly competitive. But it really, those highly competitive, man, they were from highly competitive triathletes, runners, cyclists, cross-country skiers that had that deep ability to suffer, and it was always a joy to go to those things and just see the level of athletes, not, everybody is joy seeing everybody, but boy, those top 20 men and women that showed up, oh man, it was awesome,
Yeah, it's a good point, because I'm not sure that there ever had been, or there has been such since snowshoe racing was largely disbanded. I'm not sure that there was ever a sport in which that was the case, that the top athletes from all these different sports came together in one type of sport for one season. I mean, I can't think of any other sport other than snowshoe racing in which that happened. A really interesting dynamic. And again, everybody had their own motivations for doing it. Although a common denominator among all of them were obviously the fitness benefits gained from spending a winter running on snowshoes, even if it was only once a week in which you were showing up to a race and running hard on snowshoes. There was 100% fitness benefits in the spring for anyone who was doing any type of running on snowshoes. Let me ask one last follow-up question about snowshoes and running in snowshoes. Do you still do it? Do you still get out and run around in snowshoes?
I was just gonna say, I miss it. I miss it tremendously. No, not a lot. I mean, I haven't done any this year. And I mean, quite honestly, mainly because we just haven't had the snow, I mean, which is disappointing, but I feel like as I've gotten older, I don't want to do sports that I'm not able to continuously do to acclimate, if you would, going out and running in snowshoes and then not being able to do it for, if the snow melts off or what have you, not being able to do it for 2 weeks and then going back to it. And I felt like when we were doing it, it was very consistent, so we could go out there and train at least once or twice a week on them and be able to do it. And we're very fortunate. We still do have a couple of local races that go on with the snowshoes. But for me, it's not being able to train on them. I don't feel comfortable with myself going out and going redlining like we used to, and then setting myself up for injury. But I try to get out there, if we they're waiting, they're still waiting. And, if we ever get that, the continuous snow again, God, I'd love to do it, because I miss it tremendously. The benefits were enormous, and I think for me, I saw it the most in my cycling, to be honest with you. I felt like it really built that quad strength that transferred over to the cycling the most,
Yeah, good. That's a good segue into talking a little bit about your Ironman distance triathlon passion. Let's say. So, my math suggests that you are 56 years old.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So you're a 56-year-old, 35-time Ironman finisher, plus scores of half Iron. But let's kind of pause on that. This Ironman thing. You mentioned that your first Ironman triathlon was 2004. So that's going on 19 years or so ago.
Yeah.
Right. When was your most recent finish?
Well, most recent was Lake Placid.
Lake Placid of 2021.
No, 2022. Yeah. Yep.
Lake Placid 2022. Was Lake Placid 2021 canceled because of COVID?
Let's see. 22, 21, 20 was canceled.
20 was canceled.
20 was canceled. 21 happened. Yeah.
21 happened.
20 was canceled. But my daughter and I went up and did it.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah. So it wasn't canceled. It was not canceled. That's a whole different story. Yeah.
You still got your full Lake Placid experience.
Got it in. That's it. Yeah.
So 2004 first Ironman. Your most recent Ironman was last summer of 2022. When is your next Ironman?
Next one is Lake Placid this year. So Lake Placid, yep, 2023. Last year I was supposed to have 3 of them. And I did Utah in May, Placid in July, and then of course I was supposed to be in Hawaii in October. That's probably something to save for the latter part of our conversation here.
Okay. All right. So, Sean, that the Ironman distance triathlon is, no Ironman finish is ever guaranteed. I mean, it's an ultra distance event for sure. And yet, you are a 35-time Ironman finisher over a span of 19 years, which by any measure is extraordinary.
Thanks.
What's your secret to staying fit and healthy and driven continue to push towards such a lofty goal?
Well, the secret, I mean, quite honestly, and I tell there's, you sign on the dotted line, first of all, you know.
Okay.
Once I sign, man, I'm in, you know. And what's the secret? Well, the secret is once I commit, it's the puzzle. Okay, it's a puzzle that you're talking about. It's you know, it's okay. You signed up. You got the puzzle in front of you. Now you got to figure it out. You know, and yeah, you know, it's just the secret is hard work. The secret is you know, just being the best that I can be. But but there are no secrets.
That's the secret.
The end of it. The secret is there are no secrets.
That's,
you know?
the secret. The
It's
secret
really,
is there's no secret.
You know, it's yeah.
It's hard work.
Yeah.
You know, I've heard the expression. Some people say to major in the major and minor in the minor, which I think that expression suggests that it's the big things that you should focus on and not worry about the little things. Except I have a different take on that. I actually think that we need to major in the minor, meaning we really need to pay a tremendous amount of attention to the little things, because truly, you know, it's the little things, when done consistently enough, that end up making a really big difference.
Yes.
Sean, do you believe that's true? That ultimately your success in however you define success in Ironman distance triathlon is really a result of your commitment to do the little things, the necessary things? Do you believe that that's true?
Absolutely, 100%, Chris. And I feel like it's the little things that add up. They add up, day in, day out, day in, day out. The little things to me, you know, and I guess, you know, in the way that I've always approached it, and, you know, back when I was coaching for a little bit, I tried to instill it in my athletes was, it is the little things, but they were simple little things, simple, you know, and for many, they're boring little things. You know, I don't do a lot of you know, electronic stuff, you know, stuff that distracts me, stuff that really occupies me in terms of details and stuff. I am very, it's little blocks, little baby steps equal success, if you would. And you know, I've always preached, and this is how I look, you know, Ironman race. It's not who's the fastest, it's who slows the least. And that really is, you know, goes hand in hand with my goals every day. You know, it's not getting there fast and, you know, distractions and all that. It's, you know, it's just not slowing down. You know, it's the little baby steps that I add up to the big stuff.
And as part of those baby steps, as part of those stringing together of the little things, the necessary things, done consistently day in and day out, that really speaks to this training related journey mindset, you know.
Right. Yeah.
And you mentioned that as in your bio that I asked you to put together, that you said that the training related journey is more important to you than the finish line. Have you always had that journey mindset?
Yeah. Oh yeah. You know, I mean, you know, I'm going to go way back, you know, when I was a kid, you know, I mean, I was that kid that was throwing the ball up again. You know, I played baseball and hockey, and, you know, I was throwing that ball endlessly against our barn, you know, or be inside the house, you know, throwing the ball as a kid. I just endlessly trying to, you know, pitch or take ground balls by myself, you know, hockey. just taking shot after shot after shot after shot after shot, and I've always looked up to the athletes through the years, of the four major sports, but as well as the running and the triathlon, blah blah blah, that the athletes that just continuous, the Jerry Rices, the Michael Jordans, we've got God, even we got a local Matt Bonner who played he played basketball for Florida and San Antonio, and he was right from Concord. And I'd hear stories about him being in the gym having to get kicked out of the Y, because he'd stay there until he hit umpteen 3-pointers in a row, and that's stuff. And that's what drives me, and that's what still drives me. I'm 56 years old, but I in my mind, man, I still feel like I still have my best years ahead. And it's just a day in. It's boring. It can be boring. It really can be boring to do it day in and day out. But I really firmly believe that it's what it takes.
It really sounds like you embrace the grind. Oftentimes, when I use the expression, or I have seen people react negatively to the expression of the grind, right? That people will push back and say, if training feels like a grind, then why are you doing it? That you need to make it fun. Well, my philosophy is that race day is fun. That's my opportunity to see my community, to test my fitness. But truly, day in and day out is oftentimes highly repetitive. It's oftentimes done, solo. It's done in all types of weather, beautiful weather and inclement weather. And so it can feel like a grind. And I embrace that concept. I like the idea of it being a grind. Do you think of the grind as a negative thing, Sean, or do you feel like that's where you excel?
Oh, that's definitely where I excel. I look for the grind, not all the time, obviously, but I want that. I want the grind. We don't necessarily like the grind. We look at the weather outside, and but once we get out there, it's and the grind is where that's where we grow. And that's not just in sports, but it's in work. I feel like it's in everyday life. But I love it. And it's not easy. You got to work I have to work to keep that grind. And I tell people this often, man. There's mornings that I get up and I always go into the Concord Y, and I do my runs from there, my workouts from there. And I'll tell you, there's been mornings that are it's below zero or whatever, and I got a 10-mile run to do at 4:30 in the morning for work, and I'll be at a stoplight, and I'm hoping that stoplight doesn't turn green. Or I'll, I'm wishing in the back of my mind, like, man, I hope I get a freaking flat tire so I don't have to do this run, but it's just getting there and just doing it, and what I just believe that we got to go after the grind, that's where we build, and if you don't get used to the grind, then man, life's going to chew me up, and, life isn't easy, sports aren't easy, and you got to really expose yourself to that, I think.
I completely agree. Now, you've also said that you believe that, quote, anything is possible. So I want to dig in a little bit deeper into that, and to do that, I want to introduce a concept known as possibility thinking, and I'd like to talk to you about how you use it. Before I do that, let me pay off this 9-dot puzzle thing that I keep talking to the listener about. So once again, in the show's intro, I presented the listener with a challenge called the 9-dot puzzle. Part of this initial conversation with Sean, I gave the listener some additional detail in order to solve the puzzle. So for anyone who couldn't solve the puzzle initially, I'm curious if the additional instructions helped you to find a solution. Now, interestingly enough, the 9-dot puzzle is a clever illustration of the phrase thinking outside the box, right? Because although not expressly stated, oftentimes we assume that the 9 dots, the 3 rows of 3 dots, are framed by an imaginary box within which we must remain. Remember when you were a kid, Sean, your teacher told you you need to color in the lines?
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, metaphorically speaking, that actually had a really profound effect on us. And I want to talk a little bit more about that. So, Sean, I shared with you this 9-dot puzzle. Now, I tried to solve the puzzle myself when I discovered as part of my research for this episode, and I gave up pretty quickly because I couldn't figure out how to connect all 9 dots with just 4 straight lines, because I was limited. My thinking was limited. I was trying to stay within the framework of the box, even though nobody told me I had to stay within the framework of the box. Sean, why do you think people have such a hard time solving this particular problem? In other words, why do you think people have such a hard time thinking outside of the box?
Well, I mean, I feel like I think we learn it. I think that we're told. I think that we, I'm in my 50s and I'm not supposed to get faster. I think that we're overloaded with information. I think that it's an easy excuse not to push ourselves, to think, to go after that, to push ourselves beyond whatever it is, whether it's puzzle, whether it's a job, whether it's a sport, whatever. It's easy to be. We're stuck in a comfort zone. We're comfortable with being comfortable, and I say this a lot, and I hate even but we it's getting worse. We're told that it's -10 degrees outside, so nobody should go outside, and we're constantly bombarded with not stepping out of our comfort zone. And if you're told it, and if you read it and if you watch it, enough, you're gonna believe it, and that's what you're gonna accept.
Yeah, and I think that imaginary box is a combination of our own self-imposed limitations in terms of our thinking what we are capable of.
Right.
And there's also probably some societal influence on that, the framework of those limitations as well. Right. Unfortunately, you know this to be true, that some people have a fairly challenging upbringing in which they are told that they are not capable of achieving, and that can leave an indelible mark on us with respect to our ability to think of the possibilities.
Right.
In other words, I think that the smaller our box, the more likely it is that that we favor an impossibility mindset, because
Right.
we can't possibly imagine outside of this small little framework that either we have created for ourselves and or society has influenced the size of that box.
Right.
But some people have a much larger box, right? In other words, their possibilities are expanded, to sort of carry forward that analogy, some people have the ability to enlarge the frame,
Yeah.
to make their possibility box larger. How do you think you have been able to do that, Sean? In other words, how have you been able to embrace this idea that anything is possible?
So I'm just going to go, I'm going to step back just for a second,
yeah,
and say, we're talking about people, we all have our different size boxes. I believe that every single person listening right now has that ability to have that big box, if you would, step out of that. I firmly believe that. And, I've got friends that, look, I mean, if you're talking to me and, we're talking about, marathons, or we're talking about something that's, you don't believe is possible, I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to tell you it's possible, and I'm really going to, and I'm going to tell you it's possible. And I don't care who you are. I don't care what your, what your size is. I don't care what your, what handicap might be. I don't care what, I don't care who you are. I really believe that you have it in you to go after the possible. I really do, man. And God, once I get on with somebody, that's my main purpose, is I want you to believe that you can do it, and maybe 2 years later, for whatever reason, you pop back in and say, man, I want to thank you, because I really didn't think that I could do it, and I really believe that every person that I touch, that I speak with, that, man, you can, but you got to decide and you got to commit, you got to want it, and you got to really believe in it, and you got to set all of the setbacks and all of the negativity and all the, the aches and the pains and all the excuses that we can make. You got to set them aside, man, and you got to go after it. You got to decide and commit to it, and I just got off on a tangent there, but and I get to touch a lot of people at work. I speak with many customers that I've known for many years. I've been at the Toyota dealership and at Grapponi Toyota for many years, and I get to many people that I have known for a long time, and and I obviously talk cars and all that because they bring the vehicles in for service, but I several times over the course of the week I do get to engage in conversations about the triathlon and running and that sort of stuff, and I believe that people you can do it, but you got to decide to do it. I don't remember, what was that question that you asked me, Chris?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't matter because that was an excellent an excellent thought line there. And as you were describing that, it occurs to me that that really the ability to shift from impossibility thinking to possibility thinking is really about being able to see new opportunities and potentially new solutions to the same old problems that everyone faces.
Yes.
And so that truly it isn't as though our problems change. It's really our perspective.
Right.
It's our thought around those problems.
Yeah.
And because I really think that impossibility thinking is just so very narrow and laser focused that when faced with a challenge with an impossibility mindset, we can't possibly solve the problem because because we don't allow the possibility for opportunities to present themselves to solve the problem.
Right.
But as soon as we begin to have a much more open mind with a bent more toward possibility, that all of a sudden now the same problem we are able to solve because more opportunities for solutions present themselves. But I really think the point is that you have the same problems and challenges as a possibility thinker than someone who is an impossibility thinker has.
Yes.
The reason you're able to move forward and solve the problem is because of your ability to enlarge the frame, to enlarge your thinking, to bring in more opportunities to find solutions. So really, I mean, don't you feel like when you're counseling people, what you're really doing is you're really helping them to broaden the lens, to widen the lens, to be able to see the periphery, to see on the edges of the problem, because truly those solutions almost always lie just outside of that very narrow focus. But people can't see beyond that because of their mindset. Well, have you ever had the opportunity to use this idea of thinking out of the box to overcome a challenge, say within a race?
Yeah, well, I mean, my first Ironman, you know, I mean, that really was, I mean, a lot of races, but my first Ironman was kind of out on a whim, type situation. I mean, I got this back in the Keith Jordan days when, with endorphin, and did it was a half Ironman, and I ended up getting a slot for Ironman Florida kind of last minute, you know, and I guess they were giving them out at awards, you know, and it was it was an opportunity for me, and I hadn't done an Ironman yet, and it was only probably like 3 months away from you know, from the Timberman. And I looked at my wife and I'm like, what do you think? Should you go for this thing? And she's like, yeah, do it. So I signed up for it, you know, and I, committed to it. You know, the longest I'd done at that point was a little bit more than a half Ironman. I'd gone to do a funky one in Sweden, but it wasn't. It was more or less a longer swim and about the same as a half Iron on this bike and the run, and didn't have a lot of time. Ended up getting injured. Got hurt running about 2 weeks after I had taken the slot, and I was not able to do any running leading up to Ironman Florida other than pool running. You know, I was able to bike and swim and pool run, and I almost pulled the plug on the race just because it was daunting enough anyway. But decided to actually commit to it and do it. And I went down to the race basically with a road bike with clip-on aero bars, no race wheels, no nothing, just totally, wet behind the ears, and unknown on how I was gonna. How my run was going to go, and really no clue to what I was really doing, at that time, and ended up having the fastest Ironman that I had and that I've ever had, and ended up getting a Kona slot. So, it was committing to something way out of my comfort zone, figuring out how I was going to, how I can, get myself to that level of being able to compete. It was still the unknown, still committing to flying down and doing it still with the unknown. And then, and the prize was putting it all together that given day, and that day was really like that week was a memorable one, because not only did I got a Hawaii slot, but that was the same week that the Red Sox won their first World Series. So, in 1 week, man, it was an unbelievable sequence of events. But that really catapulted me in many ways towards the things that came. And I've had countless races, I guess, that man, I've had, flat tires, and, an Ironman. I had 2 flat tires during one Ironman race, and still ended up getting a Hawaii slot. And just, to me, the race is not only, it's the fun part is the race itself, but it's also when you're throwing those obstacles at the given time. How do you put that puzzle together? How do you figure this one out? And you put yourself in these, in these situations, and you got to figure them out.
Yeah, again, it reminds me of another one of my favorite expressions of the difference between seeing the challenge in every difficulty or difficulty in every challenge.
Right.
Purely a mindset thing.
Yeah.
And I do think that the ability to see challenge in difficulties rather than the other way around is a practiced behavior. It's a practiced skill. Your ability in that your experience in that initial Ironman, this thinking outside of the box. I've never done a distance that far, but I've never done a race that far, that type of race that far. But I'm going to lean into the challenge, and I'm going to see what happens. I'm going to stay open to the possibility. And the way things transpired and worked out in a really positive way almost certainly reinforced for you the idea that anything is possible if I can think outside the box, if I don't limit myself, because truly, don't you believe that the majority of our limitations are in the 8 inches between each of our ears?
I'm going to say 100%, but I'm going to say 99.99%.
Right.
Yes,
true,
absolutely.
True. Yeah,
yes.
true.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
It's
yeah. But again, I think that there's a really powerful influence on experience, which leads me to this, that part of the foundation of this concept of possibility thinking are 4 key mindsets, 2 primary mindsets, and then 2 subsets to those mindsets. And I want to go through them because I'm curious to get your take on these essential mindsets with respect to this concept of possibility thinking. So the 2 primary mindsets are a growth mindset and something called an abundance mindset. I'll talk more about those in just a moment. They have subsets. So the subset of a growth mindset is a curiosity mindset. And the subset for an abundance mindset is a solutions-oriented mindset. All right. So let's talk about those, Sean, because I have a feeling that even though this may be a concept that you've not seen or heard presented in this way, almost guarantee these are things you're doing. Okay.
Yeah.
I have a very funny feeling that we're going to learn that you're doing these things. Let's start with this idea of a growth mindset. Now, as part of this conversation, you've actually used the word growth a couple of times. So once again, I have a feeling that you embrace this concept of a growth mindset because you've actually used the word growth several times. So this mindset, this growth mindset, sees challenges and problems as opportunities to learn and to grow. How much, Sean, do you value personal growth? Is that something that's a big deal for you?
Every day, every single day of my life, man. I mean, kind of obsessed about it, I guess, but I, physically, spiritually, mentally, and growth is, and I don't believe that, I don't think I ever stop growing, and I want to keep growing, I want to keep growing. And, as I get older, there's going to be limitations maybe, that will prevent me from growing, in certain ways, but I don't believe that we can ever stop growing, but it takes work every day,
Well, and it also takes the ability to think outside of the box,
Yes.
which is part of what you did 7 years ago when you initiated this morning routine. I mean, I'm sure the 20-year-old version of you could not have envisioned a time in which the 56-year-old version of yourself would be spending any time meditating first thing in the morning.
Yeah, not
right. but I think that this concept of growth certainly seems to me something of tremendous value to you. You know, the subset of a growth mindset is something called a curiosity mindset. So how important is learning and discovering and exploring to you?
Oh, huge. You know, I want to explore, you know, how deep I can go, how far I can go. You know, curious. Yeah. I mean, it's, you know, I'm being told that I should be slowing down. I don't believe that. I'm curious to see if I can go faster. You know, I am still curious to see if I can win the race overall. You know, it's there. You know, absolutely.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe you alluded to it, but what are some examples of how that curiosity manifests itself in either life or racing?
Yeah, I mean, really, for me, you mean as far as the curiosity goes?
Yeah.
Well, it's pushing the limits. You know, pushing the limits on my training. You know, as well as you know, kind of pushing back on, you know, on my age, and, you know, in hearing, you know, I mean, more often than not, I hear that, you know, people, you know, I'll talk to somebody and they're surprised that I still do what I do, or, you know, that I'm still, you know, doing the long distance races, or, you know, doing what I do, you know, for as long as I have, you know, but I'm curious to see how far I can go with that, you know, as long as my body and my mind are pushing forward, man. I'm going to keep being curious about that. And like I said, man, you know, in high school, I was rated, you know, they had those awards, you know, best athlete and best, you know, whatever, best looking and all that. And I got most naive, and I didn't even know what that meant. I didn't even know what it meant, honest to God. And I was just like, oh, that's cool. I got something, you know? And I honestly had no idea what it meant. But I really feel like that in looking back on that, and I still am naive. You know, I am naive enough to think that I'm going to toe that line and you know, in Boston Marathon in 8 weeks. I'm going there for the win. You know, I want to win the freaking thing, you know?
I get you.
Okay. So I'm naive, man, you know, and that, you know, the curiosity and being naive have really brought me to, you know, I guess to where I am. You know, I mean, I always wanted to play baseball for the Sox or play for the Bruins, or, you know, I've always believed that, you know, we've got to chase our dreams. We've got to be curious. You know, you got to be curious, and you know, you got to believe that you can get those dreams. And you're not gonna look 95% of the time. You're not gonna get the results that you want. You know, but you keep going, you keep pressing, you keep the curiosity going, and man, all of a sudden you get that one little shining light, and you know, that spark, and you hit it, you know, and then what's next?
I mean, it's always, I feel like it's always a matter of progress over perfection anyway, right? That curiosity is what facilitates learning. And through learning, we grow, right? So It is truly, in order for us to grow, the seedling of growth is curiosity. We have to keep asking ourselves, well, what if?
Right.
What if, Sean Snow, what if I really leaned into this training cycle?
Yeah.
Is it possible for me to stand on top of a podium?
Yeah.
What if? The other major mindset with this possibility thinking paradigm is this something called an abundance mindset. Now, an abundance mindset holds that there are no limits because there are multiple ways to solve a problem.
Yeah.
Right. Now this mindset, it's okay. We talked about one of our dogs. Somebody's dogs would bark during the podcast, and that's And for once, it's not my dogs. Just for the record. Now, who is that that's barking, Sean?
That's Kona. That's my little cockapoo, and my lovely wife is coming up the stairs, and this is how he rolls when Pam comes home. So sorry about the interruption. She hasn't come through the door yet, but once she comes in, he'll freak out a little bit, and then we'll settle back into this. But
Kona has made an appearance in the podcast.
Kona's made an appearance. He's not done yet, but
that's another amazing sort of a connection that we tied together. So once again, this abundance mindset allows us to think big, right? And venture outside of our comfort bubble. Do you tend to be a big thinker, Sean, or are you a small thinker?
So I am a big thinker for sure. But it's a small thinking in little baby steps, like we said, that bring to the big thinking. You know what I mean? Like, okay, so I am a big thinker, I mean, I have big, whether it's my athletics or my job or whatever it is, man, I want to think big, I want to think way out of that comfort zone, and I mean, I am a big thinker. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I tend to use the expression of thinking big, but acting small.
Yes.
Focusing on the little things. This is what we've talked about.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think that it would be possible at the age of 56 to still be training and competing at the Ironman distance without that mindset?
No, not. I mean, not with high goals, right? So not for, setting the bar high. No, I don't think so. I feel like you've got to. I feel like when I do commit to, and that's one of the reasons that I do commit to at least one Ironman a year, because it forces me to, okay, man, here you go again, and I don't want to just I can't just show up, I can't just wing it. I've got to actually put the work into it, day in and day out, in the baby steps, in the little stuff that allows me to do it, and so I don't. I think that you can, you could go out and, which people do, and I tip my hat to them. They go out and they, they sign up and they do it, but to go to a certain level, if you would, to get to Kona, to the podium people, if you would, they put the work in, day in and day out,
Yeah, for sure. But again, to your earlier point, whether your goal is to stand on top of a podium or your goal is to have that finisher medal put around your neck for the first time, the truth is that these things are possible for anyone.
Yes.
With a combination of excellent preparation and next level thinking.
Yes.
Not the least of which is this concept that we're talking about of possibility thinking, which I think, I mean, truthfully, when it comes to athletic specific performance, mindset performance, I think I don't think that there's anything any more powerful than what we are talking about, this possibility thinking mindset. So the last mindset is this subset of abundance mindset, which is something called the solutions-oriented mindset. That values action over inaction. It values problem solving over worrying and or just complaining about the problem. So have you ever been in a situation during a race in which you needed to immediately work to solve a problem? And how have you done that, or how did you do that?
Geez, I mean, countless races on that, but I'll go back to the two flat tires on Lake Placid. You know, it was a day that, you know, you lose, you know, one flat tire is one thing, but two flat tires, I don't know how many minutes I missed, and it was keeping my composure, you know, and just, you know, getting the aid from, you get, there's motorcycles out there with wheels, and, you know, and they can help you, you know, so I probably had maybe 25 minutes of time, you know, that I had lost, and it's keeping your composure. It was keeping my composure and just, you know, believing that, you know, it's still a long day ahead. Still ended up falling apart just before the run. You know, last few miles on the bike, I was pretty much destroyed, and then still went out and had a really good marathon. And, you know, I really do believe that our greatest moments are those moments. You know, the greatest moments are the moments that we're challenged. They bring us to a whole new level, and how we respond. And you know, it's not the easy times. It's not the victories on the field, or, you know, in the workplace or whatever. It's the more challenging times, you know, that really do build us.
Oh, I absolutely believe that there's much more value in overcoming adversity, regardless of what the eventual outcome is, than any podium that we would ever stand upon. Because I feel like there are far more opportunities for learning and for growth within adversity than there are opportunities for learning and growth through success. That's why I always encourage my athletes, and I'm curious if you do this, but I always encourage my athletes to journal after the race. I mean, it's valuable for any number of reasons. If you end up racing at that venue again, you can read your race recap from the previous time to, you know, sort of to get the ins and outs of that particular type of race. But the journaling also, I think, provides the athlete an opportunity to put a period at the end of that training block.
Right.
Because, I mean, how often does it happen that, you know, maybe we don't get the outcome that we had originally desired. And sometimes that can leave a bitter taste, right? That can sting a little bit.
Right.
And how often does it happen that we end up carrying that negative emotion forward into our recovery phase, or we maybe even carry it forward into our next training block, where truthfully that negative energy from the previous race does nothing for us going forward. It only really impairs our ability to move forward and to work toward that next goal. So I really feel like that journaling after a race is an opportunity to put all of those thoughts and emotions down, whether it's on paper or electronically speaking, and to put a period at the end of that experience so that you can move forward. But I particularly think that that's important if an athlete has had a really challenging race, because really what they just want to do is they just want to walk away.
Right.
But they don't really walk away. I mean, they walk away, but what they carry forward with them is all that negative emotion associated with that undesirable outcome. Do you do any race journaling? Do you ever put your thoughts down after a race experience?
I'm not necessarily writing it. I don't. I wouldn't. I'm not necessarily writing it, Chris. But I will say that a lot of journaling in my head, a lot of journaling, and it sticks with me. And the more, I would say that one of my personal strengths is the more adversity that's thrown at me, the more disappointing the result, the more I grow and the more I desire to get better, instead of getting hit between the eyes and quitting and just walking away from a race, from a sport, from anything in life, And I really I don't journal it, but boy, it fuels me. It really fuels me. And I've always said, man, they're blessings. I've always looked at the adversity and the obstacles that are thrown at us as blessings, and we don't necessarily like.
So, Sean, that really reminds me of the expression that smooth seas do not make skillful sailors.
You're absolutely right, man.
Right?
Absolutely right. I'll tell you that, and I'll just get into this really quick. My past year, man, last year was, a lack of a better term, a kick in the balls, for me. And, I'll tell you, man, I looked at it as, didn't like, any of it, from my hamstring in Boston to not being able to start Hawaii. But I'll tell you, man, it's really, it's sparked a little bit, within. And, it's not about the smooth sailings, man. It's those rough seas that they're blessings, man. They really are.
For sure. And, I continually have that counsel with my athletes, particularly in training. Just as an example, we are sitting here in the middle of February. This episode will be released sometime in April, probably pretty close to Patriots Day, Marathon Monday in Boston. That's probably the week that this show will air. But suffice to say that for us New Englanders who are training for the Boston Marathon, New England winters are not necessarily always amenable to quality outside running, right? And for marathoners, Boston marathoners training in New England, who have very specific performance goals, as part of that marathon preparation, you got to run some pretty specific paces in training in order to prepare to run some pretty specific paces in Boston. At least that's the way that I train my athletes for that. Well, it's not unusual, of course, as I mentioned, for New England winters to be quite uncooperative when it comes to marathoners needing to put in quality long runs. And so it seems as though it's very common in the wintertime for athletes for marathoners, for Boston marathoners, to get quite discouraged about the road conditions and their inability to hit very specific paces in their long runs. And yet what I always come back to for them is that the value in working through the adversity of snowy, slushy, icy roads. Even if you're not able to hit your paces, there is value in working through that adversity, because you, Sean Snow, know that the longer the event, the greater the likelihood is that something is going to go sideways at some point during the event. A 5K race for you can be over in 17, 18 minutes. But an Ironman distance triathlon is going to last several hours. And again, the longer the event goes on, the greater the likelihood is that something is going to go haywire. A flat tire, an upset stomach, whatever it happens to be. And the more opportunities we get to work through adversity in training prepares us mentally to deal with those moments of adversity during events. Do you believe that to be true?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, that's why, most of my training I do solo, and most of it, all of it I do with no music, no nothing. It's just me, hours and hours and hours of dealing with those. If I don't deal with it out on the road in my own head, and I guess in some ways it makes my race a little bit easier because I've all of a sudden stimulated with 2,000, or in Boston situation 30,000 other runners that I can take in the energy of the runners, the crowd, everything. I've spent hours and hours being self-propelling myself through those paces, or through the long runs, or whatever it is, the endless lines, and looking at the lines in the pool, and etc. Without any distraction other than what's going on in my mind. And yeah, that's what those are the things that build me.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Sean, let's finish with this. It's a fun part of the show I like to call 3 random questions. All right. As part of this podcast preparation, I did send to you in advance some questions that I was going to ask you, just so that you had an opportunity to maybe think a little bit about them. But the next 3 questions I did not send to you.
All right.
Okay. Because it's fun for me to hear and to see people think nimbly on their feet. But just if you'll confirm for the listener, Sean, the next 3 questions you have not been given in advance, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. So these truly are 3 random questions. All right. Are you ready, Sean Snow, for your 3 random questions?
Let's rock it, baby.
Okay. But question number 1, Sean, I mentioned earlier that you really truly are an inspiration for anyone, but particularly for folks over the age of 50. I am included in that cohort. So you are an incredible inspiration for me. You drive me to be a better version of me. But Sean, who inspires you?
Well, my daughter. My daughter with her tenacity and her willingness to commit. My wife for her support, and through the many years, and the endless the endless hours, and my family, and athletes, like yourself, Chris. Athletes that have the similar interests and the similar motivations that I have, and from professional athletes as well that I look up to, that the humble ones, the ones that the Barry Sanders that score the touchdowns and hand the ball off, the guys and the girls that they're just doing it for the love. And the mentors.
Yeah. I'll put a shout out here to my alma mater, Wake Forest University. You mentioned Matt Bonner, who played for the San Antonio Spurs. Well, he had a teammate on the Spurs that was a Wake Forest graduate, Tim Duncan, multi-time NBA champion, MVP. Tim Duncan, interesting story, and I'm sure that you know this, but I mean, Tim Duncan was, one of the 100 best basketball players to ever have lived.
Yeah.
And rather than making a really big deal about his retirement, in other words, announcing before the season that he was going to retire and, basically have his final NBA season be this sort of, this pat on the back tour. Tim Duncan and his agent and his family had made the decision before that season that he was going to be his last season, but he didn't tell anybody. Now, he may have told the Spurs organization, but beyond that, nobody else knew.
Yeah.
After the season, he released a 2-sentence press release that was it, that he was done. To me, that epitomized humility. I mean, more right, because most professional athletes don't handle their retirement that way.
Yeah.
But that was Tim Duncan, right?
Yeah.
All right, random question number 2. Sean, what's the best piece of advice that you were ever given regarding Ironman distance triathlon?
It's not who's the fastest, it's who slows the least.
Okay. Now, did you read that somewhere? Is that, can I attribute that quote to Sean Snow, or?
So you can, I would have to say that it's a term that's was used quite frequently back in the day. I think I picked it up. Remember Troy Jacobson? Troy was Spinnervals, and I had a CD that I got. It was a mental CD, preparation CD for Ironman, and I think that it was off of that CD that I picked it up. And man, it's not just like it's an Ironman thing, but to me it's going back to COVID, is 2 years. It's not who's the fastest, it's who slows the least. And, it's every day, that's an everyday thing. You don't want to be the fastest, you just want to be that person that, keeps the possibility going, keeps the optimism going, keeps the, you don't want to slow down, man. You don't want to go too fast. Just don't slow down. You know?
I mean, it really speaks to the value of perseverance trumping talent.
Yeah.
Because it's not necessarily always the most talented person,
right,
that finishes first.
Right.
It's the person that perseveres through the adversity that almost always occurs, whether that's in life, or whether that's in training, or whether that's in the race experience itself. So truly, it really is a metaphor for life. And to me, I interpret that as being about perseverance. It's the person who is able to persevere, to work through the adversity. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, no, it is, man. And if you think about so many of the great athletes of our time, some of the greatest have got extreme adversity at an early age or throughout their, Tom Brady. I don't think he would even started at Michigan, right? And until I don't even know if he started his senior year or whatever, and then he was picked whatever, and he continues to, and the Michael Jordan getting cut, from his high school team to just endless, and it's persevering, Yeah.
I love that. I love that term, and I really think that applies in this situation. Okay, last random question for you, and it's actually one of my favorite questions to ask. I've sort of found myself asking this question quite a bit. I think probably because I really value the insightful responses to this. So here's your third random question. So Sean, you're hosting a group run, and you can invite 3 VIPs. Now, assume all VIPs are runners, even if you know them to be runners or not. Okay, just assume anybody that you would consider a VIP as a runner and would join in on this group run. Now, these guests may be known to you, or they may be people you've never met. Now, they can be real people or they can be fictional. In other words, they can be cartoon characters or movie characters or book characters. They can also be from the present, or they can be from any time in the past or future. They can even be versions of yourself from the past or future. Sean Snow, who are your three special guests?
Oh, man. Oh, that's a tough one, man. That's oh, there's uh well, I'd have to go with. I'm gonna go with. I guess I'm gonna go with three athletes that have inspired me in different ways through the years. I'd have to go with Jerry Rice. I have to go with Lance Armstrong. And then I would have to go with Bobby Orr, the three of them. I'd love to have them there.
All right, let's let me ask a follow-up to that then. What is it that you admire, or did you admire, about Jerry Rice during his playing career?
His work ethic. I wasn't a 49ers fan, but his work ethic. I would hear and read about his workout routines, and I think one thing that really impresses me to this day is when I see him, he still looks like he's still keeping himself in phenomenal shape, and I don't know anything about him or anything like that, but I've always had tremendous respect for the athletes, the pros that made all the money and, were very successful, and yet they still keep themselves in awesome shape,
Well, and he also came from a historic black college, Mississippi Valley State, a relatively small school on the grand scheme of college football. In other words, he didn't go to Alabama or Miami or Notre Dame. He went to Mississippi Valley State. And became arguably the greatest wide receiver of all time. All right, similar question about Lance Armstrong. What was it about Lance Armstrong that inspired or that you admired?
So I don't think that I would be where I am today if it wasn't for Lance back in the heyday with the tour. I know that obviously there's the big asterisk and all that that goes along with it, but I will say that the excitement from the tours through those years hit me. Were right at the point where I was starting to get into biking and running, and to me at that time, he was Superman, and I felt like he really brought a sport into the scene, brought a lot of us into, believing that anything was possible on a bike, and, obviously it's a really, it's still a touchy subject with people. I don't agree, obviously, with a lot of things that went on. And that's a whole different topic, but I've always looked at him for Lance, and for what he did. I don't know him. I've never met him, never spoken with him. And I don't know anything really about his private life or anything like that. But the guy, I really look up to what I learned from his cycling and just his hard-nosed ability to persevere, in all those tours that we watched, that he was challenged with,
I mean, the doping aside, his story is really, it's a great story.
Yeah.
And we talk about overcoming adversity
Yeah.
and perseverance. I mean, I think, adversity and perseverance, I mean, those really were those were the themes of the book. It's not about the bike. And so, although, yeah, to your point, I think his PED use certainly overshadowed his remarkable story of what he overcame in terms of cancer. Also interesting connection, as you know, he started as a triathlete.
Yeah.
And he actually was a fairly competitive
Right.
junior level triathlete. I mean,
Yeah.
had he decided to dedicate himself and to go into that sport, he arguably would have become the Lance Armstrong of triathlon, but he went into cycling. Did you, I know I had one. Did you wear a Live Strong bracelet during that period of time?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. And I got to see him. He raced at Mount Snow. I don't, whenever it was one of his years of winning the Tour, and it was after. I think Mount Snow was maybe in August, and he showed up for that, race pros, and I'll never forget. I went over and I had my big cam, it was a huge camcorder, and I was just recorded him. He was on his trainer warming up, and nobody was really betting him into the field because it was the World Cup back then. It was just the field was stacked, and it was just like, and everybody was like, Lance is going to get his ass kicked, and he ended up flatting, and he had a flat tire, and he still got like 5th overall. And, it was just, I don't know. It was just, it was fun. It was a fun time to be into cycling,
Yeah. And, my take on that story has always been that, say what you want about, the competitive disadvantage that the doping resulted in. A couple things I think are true. First of all, everybody, he wasn't the only one that was doping back then. Okay, that doesn't excuse it, but that just, it helps to contextualize it.
Yeah.
And the other thing was that his exploits during that time, he was still a cancer survivor.
Right.
And what he ended up doing by lifting people with cancer up, and lifting their spirit, and lifting their this idea of what is possible.
Yeah.
If that all came about because of PEDs, I'm completely fine with that, because he directly outside of the sport of cycling, he had an incredible impact on people who were battling cancer during that time. Do you know what I'm saying? And they
agree.
People who would never get on a bike drew a tremendous amount of inspiration and strength from what he was doing during that time.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. And like I said, it was, each tour, from outside the cycling to inside the actual races that he was doing, man, each tour he overcame these crazy obstacles from the handlebars, getting caught, falling, to crashes, and he still persevered. And whether you took PEDs or you didn't, that certainly was not the be all end all of how he was able to overcome each obstacle that was thrown at him. And
for sure.
I learned a lot from that.
Yeah, for sure. I think his impact reached far outside of cycling, truthfully.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see that as a negative thing. I think if because of his PED use, he lifted people up with cancer, I'm totally cool with that.
Yeah.
All right. So the last follow-up question, I'm glad to see you've got a New England athlete here in your list of 3 VIPs, Bobby Orr, old school Boston athlete. What was it about you, man? You can't be old enough to remember Bobby Orr playing hockey. You're my age.
Man, dude, he was the man, I think he was the only guy that I cried when he retired, and I cried when they retired his number, and when he retired, and he was the guy, man. We had endless street hockey games or endless, one-on-ones, and we pretend that we scored the goal, and we all, lifted our leg and, threw our stick in the air, and, that was it, and it was, God, he was the greatest of all time, and I know that it's a different game now and different game back then, but there's nobody that could go end to end the way that he did, and just so gracefully. And I think that the thing that's, again, talking about, the Barry Sanders, handing off the ball and the humility and the humbleness, to this day, from what I gathered, he is still, a big part of the Boston scene, and I've never met him, but from what I understand, just a humble guy that very generous and just a super person. And from being a kid and watching him to still hearing that he's still number 4.
What a great list of 3 VIPs. I can only hope to be invited on that group run, Sean. Sean, thank you very much for sharing your story. I really, really appreciate it.
It's been a joy, man, and I greatly appreciate it, Chris, and enjoy following you, man. And hopefully we'll be able to get back out on those snowshoe trails again soon, and shake it up.
It would be fun to try to keep up with you, Sean. That is for
I don't know
sure.
about that, man. Right back at you.
Thanks again.
We played this game. And somehow we're right next to each other. I know how it goes.
I have a feeling that we would both beat each other's brains in, and neither one of us would pull away from the other. I'm almost.
We're gonna be 80 years old, man, and we're gonna finally get a snowy. We're gonna get a big ass, winter. We're going to bring back those 5 race series again. We're going to be 80, and we're going to be out there pounding each other like we did.
Sean, I look forward to that. Thanks again so much.
Thank you, man. Take care.
One thing that struck me is Sean's morning routine. It's such a simple and effective thing to do, yet how many of us are actually doing it? In addition to yoga, prayer, and meditation, self-reflection in the morning can also shape and craft the rest of your day. The late Steve Jobs knew this better than anyone. Too often our lives are set to autopilot, and before long, we've lost touch with how to man the controls. Jobs avoided this by asking himself one fundamental question each morning when he looked in the mirror. If today were the last day of my life, would I want to do what I am about to do today? If the answer was no for too many days in a row, he knew he needed to change something. Once again, you've been listening to the Eat Half, Walk Double podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard, please circle back to the homepage and click the follow or subscribe button to stay up to date with all the new content. And of course, if you really enjoyed the show, please consider sharing it with your friends. I'll be posting some supporting media on my Twitter account at Coach Chris J. Dunn and the show's Facebook page at Eat Half Walk Double, so make sure to check that out. And lastly, remember, the secret to living well and longer is to eat half, walk double, laugh triple, and love without measure. Until next time.